Hello and welcome to a new video. This one is all about my personal experience of having dietary requirements, dietary preferences, and also not wanting to be a nightmare guest when I go and eat with other people. So this is my personal experience. It's actually inspired by a question I was asked by an MEN1 patient who wants to know what she should do when she goes to a family gathering and there is something there that she wouldn't normally eat. So the first place to start is realising that this can quite often cause anxiety, stress, feelings of like guilt and shame. I definitely felt that kind of years ago in my journey, particularly when I first started looking into my gut health and realising that when I went to stay with people or when people wanted to cook for me, that I might need to tell them that I had these requirements. And I'd often feel like embarrassed or ashamed. I didn't want to be the awkward guest. No one wants to be that guest. What I realised I had to do, and I still sometimes have to do now and remind myself, is like if the boot were on the other foot, if I reverse the situations and someone said to me, Lizzie, I have these dietary requirements and this is what I can eat, this is what I can't eat, like my response is obviously going to be, well, of course, like we'll work around it, we'll do something about it. And I think sometimes when you are the person with those requirements, it's easy to think that like the friend or the family member is just going to see you as being like totally awkward and difficult, when actually the likelihood is that they want to help you. Generally, we're wired to want to help each other out and not make each other's lives more difficult. So I think it's a really important skill to be able to have, to take yourself out of your shoes and put yourself in someone else's and say, okay, well, if the situation was reversed, like how would I feel? And as I say, in so much of my experiences, so many of my experiences, my friends and family have been more than accommodating. They've actually gone like over and above to make sure that I am catered for and that my needs are catered for. The second thing I was going to say was, very often other people can feel like you're putting a problem on their plate, if you'll pardon the pun, but not necessarily providing a solution. And this can happen in all areas of life, it's not just food. But I realised actually how much more helpful is it of me if I present the problem, which is I have these dietary requirements. So whatever's here on the table or what you might be preparing to cook might not work for me. And instead of leaving it there and leaving it for the other person to work something out, come up with some solutions, like suggest some things that might help them out so they don't even have to do the thinking. And this works across all areas of life, by the way. So let's put an example to it. I'm going to go and eat with a friend and she said something like, oh, like I'll cook. And I have to say, okay, just so you're aware, I don't eat gluten, I don't eat dairy. This isn't necessarily true, by the way, I'm just using it as an example. I don't eat gluten and I don't eat dairy, and I wanted to let you know, in order to make things a little bit easier, I can, for example, bring some food along that I can eat, or I can do the cooking with you and like help you. So just to make sure that, you know, there is something, there's an option for me. I could eat before I come over, and then it just takes like that complication out of it. Or we could go out to eat or order a takeaway. And all I know is, if again the boot were on the other foot and someone suggested that to me, I'd be so grateful, because I'd be thinking, man, that's a problem that I don't have to solve. So a really, really pragmatic way of doing things and a very tangible piece of advice I'd give back to myself is like, come in as soon as possible with the solutions. And again, experience has shown me that like, because I have amazing friends and family, they don't want me to go to too much effort, so they'll insist that they work around me, and that's amazing. I'm super lucky in that respect. But sometimes if it's like a larger gathering, for example, like Christmas, or it's a big birthday party, or there are just going to be lots of people there, it can be quite a lot of pressure on the person who's cooking. So very often I'll take along something that I can eat, or I'll eat beforehand, and it just like takes that pressure off everybody. So in quick summary, if you're going to present a problem, present solutions with it. The third thing I wanted to talk about is kind of comes back to my first point around those feelings of like stress and anxiety that it can cause to have those dietary requirements and to need to be able to communicate them. I've come to learn more recently, looking back on my experience, that sometimes it's caused me more stress to try and stick to my requirements than it would have been just to go along and relax and see what happens. So my nature is I quite like to be in control and know like how the situation's going to pan out. So I'll often ask in advance like what's going to happen with food. Sometimes though that has not served me because it's allowed me to start catastrophizing before I've even got there, and my mind goes to kind of 5 different places and starts trying to come up with like solutions to every single problem that could present itself. And the stress is so great that I get there and realize it wasn't necessary. The thing with stress is that stress has a far greater impact on the gut and the gut's ability to digest food and then the body's ability to absorb those nutrients than what we're actually eating. And I fundamentally believe now that if it's going to cause me more stress to communicate and make sure my dietary needs are met by whoever it is than just to go along and see what happens, then I'll go with the former. Like, I will just relax and chill and get there and then sort myself out once I'm there. Obviously, this comes with a caveat, which is that some people have a different level of commitment to their food preferences, to their dietary requirements. For example, like if you're a serious celiac or you carry an EpiPen and you're going to have some form of anaphylaxis, yeah, really, really important to make sure that you communicate that. But in this day and age, where more people now are looking into their gut health without necessarily having massively serious symptoms behind it, or even if your symptoms are quite mild, sometimes it's worth just stepping back and being like, actually, is the stress causing more of an issue than the food? Is the stress that I'm feeling in advance of what's not yet happened going to cause more of an issue than me trying to make sure, going to like crazy extents to make sure that I have something to eat when I'm there? And that's a really, really valuable thing that I have to keep reminding myself. So, 3 things to remember if you're going to go and eat with family and friends and you are on a particular diet or you follow any sort of like specific food choices. Number 1, like reverse the situation. And if you start to feel guilty and you start to feel ashamed, ask yourself, how would you feel if your guest coming to you felt guilty and ashamed about their dietary requirements or their preferences? Like, you wouldn't want that. So in and of yourself, like, those emotions aren't really serving anything. Just have the confidence that you'll be okay and that you can meet your needs and be able to communicate those. Number 2, don't present a problem without a solution. It's really, really important, and I've given you some there. Bring food, eat beforehand, go out to eat, order takeaway. Like, there are so many ways of getting around dietary requirements which don't involve someone needing to cook to your preferences specifically. So that's really important. Number 3, like, look at the stress first. The stress is more important than the food that you're putting inside your gut, or in my experience anyway. The stress has a greater impact on my gut than the food I'm putting inside it. And I say this as someone who has quite a severe intolerance to gluten, and I've recently discovered that gluten can have less of a like bad effect on my gut if I'm eating in a really like relaxed state than the stress I have sometimes been under to make sure there is no gluten in my food. It's kind of ironic, but that's how powerful the mind is. So those are my 3 kind of tips for being someone who has food requirements and also wants to be able to eat with family and friends. I hope that this has landed for you in some way. If there's anything particularly useful that you're going to be able to take away and use, like, please share it back with me. Leave a comment. and or get in touch with me and let me know. It's really good for me to know what lands with you. Feel free to reach out. My details are all below, and if you're not yet part of my email update community, like, get yourself there, because I'm moving more of my content onto that platform now. So yeah, it's a really important place to be. Enjoy your weekend.